Hey friends, Dean here. Before we get you on to your episode, I want to take a moment to invite you to our next virtual online trivia night. Wednesday, May 13th at 8 p.m. Join us either on our Facebook group or on our YouTube page for 3 rounds of fun trivia, music questions, movie questions, general knowledge questions. It'll be a fun time and a chance to win some prizes and have just a good relaxing night of some trivia at home. You don't even have to go out for it. So don't forget, Wednesday, March 13th at 8 p.m. Join us on our Facebook group or YouTube for 3 rounds of fun virtual online trivia. We'll see you there. Put on your ruby slippers and join us as we celebrate the career-defining double album from Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff, and Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. We believe this is the premier place, the final destination, if you will, for the finest in music and movie podcasting. Can I get a second on that?
You sure can.
Hey,
I second that motion wholeheartedly.
I second that emotion.
There you go. Yeah.
That was a song, right? Second that emotion.
It's funny that you say the final destination, given the title of this album that we're talking about tonight.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
See?
Yeah.
And that wasn't even a forethought. I just start spouting and just start saying stuff, and wherever it goes, it goes. As you know, you've known me for long enough.
That's right.
That some of it lands, but most of it crashes and burns.
I think it's great that you admit it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's fantastic that you're so.
If I'm going to own the wins, I got to own.
Yeah.
If I'm going to own the wins, I got to own the losses as well. You can't just be all the W's. You got to take the L's. You got to take the L's with it. Otherwise, right? That's just the way it is. So, thank you for joining us on this episode of the 3324 podcast. We bring you music, we bring you movies, we bring you all kinds of fun entertainment stuff, and we do it every week. Mm-hmm. And if you don't think this is real, well, go on Facebook and Instagram, find us at 3324 podcast. You'll see that there's real people behind here. This is not like a robotic podcast, and it's
we are not
2
robots.
guys that are really doing it. And we've got a great community that we would love for you to join, and become a part of, and really engage in this type of content. If you love the classics of music and movies, complete the mission and join us on social media, if you will. A lot of great people there as well that share a lot of great content.
How many people we have now?
Not enough. We need
not
more.
enough.
But
we need to
91,
I believe. I think people on the page, something like that.
We need enough that we have to have we'll have to have a census taker count it like it's a city. Like we need a population. Is what we're going for. Right now, we're like a Hamlet.
Be like Eustace in It's a Wonderful Life, where he's like sitting there with the calculator, like at the end, like
that's it.
Like
counting all the members of our page,
counting all the people and the money, and there you
counting
go.
all the members as they walk in, and we're just kind of we're clicking them in. So you are cordially invited to join us there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So by all means, do that. We are talking about Elton John. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. We hadn't gotten to an Elton John when I was making my list. Again, I talk about this a lot of like what the original was, like titles that kind of jumped out at me. This was one of them, and I have to admit though, I'm not a prolific Elton John fan.
Neither am I.
I felt that this was, if we were going to talk about one, it needed to be this one.
Yeah, no doubt, absolutely. I mean, the early years for me, that's really. Like very much like Billy Joel. We talked about that in The Stranger. I prefer the early works, the 70s stuff. And certainly in this case, the early 70s for Elton John, no doubt. I mean, he put so many great hits, and good Lord. I mean, just the radio alone. Yeah. That's how I got to know Elton John. I mean, how could you not? Right. Yeah. It's, so.
Back in this era, it was like on popular like AM radio. It was like a diet of Paul McCartney and Elton John. Like those were like the two like the two big like consistent hit makers through the 70s was Paul McCartney either with Wings or without, and Elton John. Like you could always rely on those two artists to have hits consistently throughout the 70s. I don't know that any other band did it consistently through the 70s. You could say the Bee Gees did a bunch, but it was later in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
They had a big resurgence. But, I always think of Elton John and Paul McCartney as like the two hit makers of the 70s that were always consistently charting.
Oh yeah.
And the music was always on the radio. If it was like Philadelphia Freedom and Let 'Em In and, My Love, and then, Don't Go Breaking My Heart. There was always something from these two artists, it seemed, happening on the radio at one point or another.
Yeah. Every album in those years had at least one hit. It's guaranteed. You could buy all their albums and you could say, yeah, well, this one was better than that. And I don't particularly care for side 2 of this one or whatever, but you could always rely on just at least one great song. But there were more, of course, but but you're right. Both those artists were
maybe,
were consistent.
What about Chicago? That just came to me.
Chicago. Yeah.
Chicago from the beginning of their career through the 70s, they were always, again, and they were like, we're going to talk about double albums in a little bit. Right. They made a cottage industry of releasing double albums, but even on double albums, it'd be like 2 or 3 songs. Saturday in the Park, Feeling Stronger. Through the 70s, it felt like they were another group that was just kind of always there. There was always a hit from them.
You could, you could sense the change. I mean, they were so heavy into that sort of jazz fusion thing in the beginning. And then, they just got softer and softer as they went along. by 78, 79, it's like,
Yeah, they were, it was
and then, of course, the 80s resurgence of,
Stay the Night.
And,
that's a great video. When he's in the truck.
I bought that album on the basis of that video, and
right.
It's like, I'm not a big fan of 80s Chicago, but I had to have that,
That's such a quintessential 80s produced song too. It's got this.
It is.
So, let's get into this album. Let's talk the stats. Cause you know what, if you thought, Eric, that I forgot, I didn't. I have the stats.
Of course
at hand.
not. I wouldn't.
And we're not going to, even if we do it at the end, even if there's a time when I forget, I'm not going to forget. We're going to do it even if it's at the end. That's like the beginning credits at the end, but we're still going to do it. So this was released.
The stats to this one is just amazing. This is a beast of a record. So go ahead.
Yep. And don't be afraid about that. It's a double album too, and we'll get into that. Released in October 1973, produced by Gus Dudgeon. Words, and this is important. Words by Bernie Taupin. Music by Elton John. There were 4 singles released from this album, although you would think it would be 5. Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, hit number 12. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, hit number 2. Benny and the Jets, hit number 1. Benny. Candle in the Wind was released in the UK, but was not released as a single in the States. And then oddly enough, the 5th song that you might have thought was a single is a song called Harmony.
Yeah.
Which actually was the backside. It was the B-side of the Benny and the Jets single.
Yeah.
Because this album had so many hits and was charting for so long, they decided not to release Harmony as a single because his next album, Caribou, was about to come out. Yeah. And they were still deep into this album. And they're like, well, we're not going to release any more singles because Caribou was like going to be coming out. And we need to be promoting that. So oddly enough, it wasn't for lack of singles. It was actually more for they ran out of time to release as much material as they wanted to, like quality, like Harmony. Harmony's
that's right.
Like
but Harmony it was an FM staple.
Oh, absolutely.
On the radio, you might as well call it a hit because it certainly got enough airplay.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Hit number 1 on the Billboard charts. 8 times platinum. So that's sold in excess of 8 million copies. There it is for you. And he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 1994. I'm glad to see that he was in early. He got in, that's kind of second wave class after they got through the Beatles and all the 60s groups. And then they started like on the late 60s, early 70s. So Elton John got in there. So this was a double album. And I was trying to think about like, is this, how does this rank in double albums? Because it's nowadays double albums do come out, but that's just because of vinyl and artists make so many songs that they have to, it would be one CD, but it would be double if it was on vinyl. Back when this came out, these were double albums by choice, right?
Yeah.
And I think the first big double album that I was aware of is the Beatles' White Album.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, that was like the first double album that I can recall, and at least a studio album. That was
I mean, if those early days, I mean, it's hard because there were albums that were double. They would consider double albums, but they didn't have, as like you said, like there weren't as many songs. They maybe have maybe there could be like an album full of like 8 or 9, 10 songs at most.
Yeah,
but it was still a double record.
Because they were so long, because they were
some of the songs could be,
they got the opportunity to do something expansive.
Yeah.
Right. And that's usually what it was used for.
My first experience with a double record was Quadrophenia by The Who. And then, Tommy and, got to know that. But there would, and just when you realize that there's so many in the 70s, so many double records. And I don't know what do you think? I mean, are you a fan of the double record?
Well, that's the thing.
That's the thing. It's like
we hit on Chicago, and I was, I'd watched last year, or the year before, the documentary about Terry Kath, the Terry Kath Experience.
Great doc.
Great documentary. So I started looking back at like the Chicago discography.
Yeah,
and their first 3 or 4 albums were all double albums.
Yeah,
not exaggerating. They were, the first 3 or 4 albums were double albums. Chicago 1 through 4. I mean, like, how do you? For me, I was like, okay, it's ambitious enough for a group to put out a double album as their first album, let alone their second, third, and fourth album, that you've got so much material or making, some type of a statement. Usually the double albums are saved for that epic.
It's that prestige moment.
Sometimes it's a concept,
right.
The White Album was a glut of material, right? The White Album we have just got so much material that it needs to go on 2 albums. There really wasn't any focus to it. Derek and the Dominoes, right? Double album.
Yeah.
But that had kind of, there was a purpose to it, right? There was something, there was a reason for it. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. I know Frank Zappa did a lot of double albums. We're going to go with ELO, Out of the Blue. And we've got Fleetwood Mac for Tusk.
Yeah.
And that's if you've never heard what that sound is, that's the Buckingham bell. So anytime there's a Jeff Lynne or Fleetwood Mac reference, you're going to hear the bell.
He got the bell.
Coming.
Yep.
So no, there's a lot of artists that use the double album to either, it seems like it's one of 2 things, either to unload a ton of material, right? Or the triple album in George Harrison's case, or they have an expansive collection of songs that are connected. And that's where this fits into. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, it was not like we've got all these songs laying around. All these songs were written by Bernie Taupin, like all the lyrics in 2 weeks.
The wealth of material that these two, it's such an amazing process. I mean, they're just 2 separate rooms. This guy's writing all the lyrics, and Elton John writes the music in minutes.
Very interesting partnership. Yeah, you mentioned, you just literally said it. Like, it's usually when you've got songwriting teams, we go back to the Squeeze episode. We talked about Difford and Tilbrook, right? Difford will write the lyrics and Tilbrook will write the music, but they're in a band together. So there's that collaboration part of it, right? Brian Wilson with Pet Sounds, when, he had Tony Asher help him write lyrics, but they were meeting every day and talking about feelings, emotions, what they were trying to get across.
Yeah.
With this songwriting team, it's very, very insulated.
Very, very odd. I mean,
Bernie Taupin will write stuff and then just submit it and have nothing else to do with it.
That's
He
right.
will literally hand Elton John, here's all the papers.
And Elton could literally sit down at the piano and have the song written in like 5-6 minutes. A piece of music that's just boom, that's just knocking it out. Good Lord. I mean, I just can't imagine that kind of flow. And it just never stopped.
Yeah.
Just like the song of song after song after song. And in this case, a double album that, they recorded it, and they already had like 2 or 3 great albums to begin with, right? I mean, Honky Chateau is one of my favorites.
This was
Madman Across the Water.
This was his 7th album already.
Yeah.
It was already 6 in by the time he got to this.
Right.
And they wanted to, for some reason, they were, Elton John and his group were enamored with the Rolling Stones. They had recorded their album Goat's Head Soup down in Jamaica. So it's like, oh, let's go to Jamaica. Yeah. We'll record our album there. And because they did it there. Mm-hmm. It was not a kind environment. It was very stressful. There was a lot of, not a revolution going on, but things were just very dangerous there. There was just wasn't necessarily a safe place to be at that point.
Right.
So
a little bit of an upheaval, if you will. Yeah.
So, at that point though, Bernie Taupin had written all these in about 2 weeks. He had written everything.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, Elton John literally wrote the music in 3 days for this album. Then they relocate to France because it wasn't happening in Jamaica. So they bring everybody back up to France and relocate and kind of live together.
Right.
Elton with his band. Again, Bernie is, it's such an odd relationship for someone who was so prolific and had such an impact with his songwriting that he was so almost removed from the process. Like, here's the lyrics, and then he just goes and does, and does not have a say or input. I don't want to make it sound like he doesn't care, but it's kind of like, here's all the lyrics, Elton, go ahead and put it to music. And Elton said, listen, I'm not a lyricist. And that's why they made such a good partnership, because
the dynamic
they were both halves of the same singer-songwriter.
Yeah, the dynamic. I can't really think of. I don't know if Elton John actually ever wrote or he tried to write any songs. I don't. He might have back in when he first started out. Maybe he gave it a go and decided that this isn't good. This isn't my wheelhouse. But he's a brilliant, pianist. He's a brilliant musician. It just comes to him. Boom, just knocks it out.
And that's the thing is he's so connected with these songs that you immediately assume that he wrote them.
Yeah.
And that was always what I thought.
Right.
I was like, yeah, he wrote, Benny, all these things just because of the way he delivers them and just with, especially on this album with all the different looks you get, all the different types of music, you assume it was him. And then it was like, no, this guy, Bernie Taupin, writes everything.
It's a testament to music. Right. I mean, we come back to this a lot. I mean, you and I, it was always about the music first. It has to hit you. Yeah. And in this case, it's so true, because those melodies and those lyrics would be nothing without Elton John's, his melodies and his sense of really, really putting it out there and getting those.
Yeah, because lyrics on a page is one thing. It's written. It doesn't say anything about tempo and what should this song be a ballad? Should it not be a ballad? Like, how do you decide that when this guy's just literally handing you stuff with no other input? He's like, here, Elton, here's
there's
the
a
lyrics.
Lot of and there's a lot, if you listen to a lot of the lyrics, they're not a lot of them are kind of run on type of stuff too. You got multiple, a lot of words in a sentence. You got this, there's something, sometimes they're not even rhyming, so how does Elton John work around that and get that those melodies within those and to keep it there too? I mean, he doesn't change the lyrics necessarily. The music fits, he just weaves it in around those lyrics and just it keeps it going. And I'm amazed. I can't even say it. I'm flabbergasted. I'm like,
and the more I thought about this album and the more I listened to it, the more in awe of it I was, because I'm this is not a standard collaboration. Usually there's people giving input. It's it's almost like he could just get this stuff in the mail and then, okay, here's your lyrics. Now, what are you going to do with it? So, is he? The question is Elton John noodling around with melodies anyway, or is he waiting for the lyrics and then putting music to it?
I think it's the latter. I
think he's right. He gets the lyrics, then he writes to it.
No, I definitely think he gets those words and he just sits right down and goes.
Yeah,
and it's still going on. Yeah. Right. I mean, I can't remember. I don't think
they took they took a very brief break. I think Elton did 2 albums without him. I think they needed a little time away. And then they've been together ever since. I mean, there's, he literally is Elton John's voice, and he probably doesn't get enough credit for that because Elton John is such a big personality in rock, right? With the costumes and the piano, and he's larger than life, even larger than Freddie Mercury in some instances, just from his from everything. So
very flamboyant, let's say.
yeah. So he's going to take up all the oxygen. So you're going to think, like, and he gives it his all. So you think, he takes full ownership of the song. So you assume that it's him, but meanwhile, it's this other person relating his life experiences. But finding that Elton John can relate to it too, that there is a simpatico that they have with each other, where Elton John can relate to the same stuff too. The same life experiences, and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road is a lot of that. It's a lot of, I want to say nostalgia. I don't mean nostalgia in old-timey music, but on Bernie Taupin looking back on his youth,
sentimentality,
when he was younger, and for the good and the bad, the sentimental stuff like Roy Rogers, but also Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, of being a rough and tumble guy.
It was a very specific pub that he favored back in the day, that he used to frequent. So a lot of that kind of ruckus was going on. But I think Elton I think it has to be said that his lyrics Elton, I think, shares in those memories as well. I mean, something about those lyrics. I mean, obviously, in working with him for so long, they have to. He has to feel these lyrics himself. Perhaps maybe it's taking it in a different direction, or perhaps it's a different experience or whatever. But he does, there is a connection, and there is
absolutely,
a sort
there
of.
has to. I think there has to be, like, there's no way that
you can't work with somebody that long and just be,
and fake it and fake it too. That's the thing with this album. Those vocals, when you listen to his performance in Harmony, which is the closer, I mean, you believe that it's something that he's experienced. So there is absolutely that connection between the two, growing up in the same area, or the same type of whatever, middle class or lower middle class lifestyle, whatever it was they had. I think a lot of these experiences that Bernie Taupin writes about are common to those people that were growing up in that time. So Elton could absolutely relate to it, and then inject his spirit into it, right? With a song like Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting. Like, that's just again, when you look at it on the page, it's words, but then when Elton puts like his, it's a total rave up on the album. It's like, especially where it lands on the album, you kind of get a side and a half of not a lot going on. And then there's your sister can't dance, but she can, sister can't twist, but you can rock and roll. Yeah. Right. And which is kind of like this quirky, that's like a throwbacky song. It's kind of like really kind of quirky. But then right after it is Saturday Night's All Right with Fighting, which is almost like a sequel to it. Yeah. And the energy level is just so amped up on that song. Like when you listen to those two songs together, like you hear this and it's like, oh, this kind of like, it sounds like a 50s throwback thing. And then it goes right into Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting. And it's just like this energy is just like all of a sudden there's like this wave of energy that comes over, that he's like, the energy that he's got on this album. You can't dispute it. It's
can't.
Undisputable.
And there doesn't seem to be, I wonder if like what you hear is what you get. Do you wonder if there are any songs that they didn't use? Are there lyrics that just weren't good enough, or music that wasn't good enough? I don't really get that sense with a lot of these albums. They just, because they
just like he writes it and just submits it, and
exactly.
And here it is.
And what you actually get what they contributed.
So he gave him 16 songs or 17, and okay, there's the out. We'll record all of them. And
you don't really see a lot of, like, he didn't really put out like throughout his career. Yeah, there was box sets, there was compilations, but there were a lot of B-sides and things like that, but you didn't see a lot of outtakes. Yeah, a lot of like
or unreleased stuff. Yeah, like, oh, we were going to work on this project and we threw it away, or
you don't see like songs being worked up and developed.
There's not a lot of fat.
There's not a lot of that. Yeah, they just
very lean.
That's right.
And the thing I enjoyed about listening to this album, and if you listen on Spotify, for a lot of it they have this little thing where the lyrics will come up, and it's just really nice with this album. Yeah, because Bernie Taupin is such a visual storyteller. His songs are stories, and reading the lyrics as he's singing it, I think for me it really enhanced the whole thing, because it's like reading a story and having someone sing it to you. Yeah, and that's what I really grew to appreciate about Bernie Taupin, and how underrated he is just really how skilled he is at just writing stuff that, they happen to be songs, but for him, they just start out as words and either a story or a poem or whatever it is.
That's right.
Starts out as thoughts from inside of him. And then, Elton takes it and then magically transforms it, into like, like Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Absolutely is probably my favorite Elton John song.
Yeah. Well,
I think it's the one. I think it's the one.
Yeah. Mine's the opener.
Well, that's pretty interesting.
And Love Lies Bleeding is, oh my God. And in a live setting, because I've seen Elton John twice.
Yeah.
In concert, and that was to hear
does
that.
Does he open with that?
Oh my God, he did the second time I saw it, because he played. That was like the tour with it was no album at the time.
Yeah,
it was just coming around with the hits. But this was in the '90s. But man, yeah, that was oh my God. And he was
like, see why you love that. That's got the whole half, Funeral for a Friend is very proggy.
My God. Yeah.
Very, very much like you're listening to him like, well, what am I listening to? Like
so many changes, like
different
chord changes. Yeah.
It's got some guitar in it and it's just like this weird thing.
Love it.
Then it just goes into like this really like kicking song.
And then you just got that riff, that guitar riff, and it's such an energetic song, and it's such a it starts out so dour, like so somber. The title implies, because that's what it is. I mean, it's like, but then it just builds up into this really energetic. And I remember he was under the piano. He was like, you couldn't see him. He was under the stool, and he was like playing like this. I mean, he was. He's
going to give you your money's worth.
He definitely puts on a great show.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to open the album like that, it's an 11-minute song. It's two songs basically. They were two separate songs. It turns out that they were written in the same key. So when Gus Dudgeon, the producer, was like, oh well, these actually can kind of link them up. So they linked it up, and you get a really powerhouse opening. I mean, that really kind of sets the table for the musicianship that you're going to hear with the first part of it, where it's instrumental. Yeah. And then that Love Lies Bleeding is it sounds like it almost echoes other songs from the album. It's kind of like, it's like a prologue, it's kind of like setting you up. Like I agree. It's almost like introducing Elton John. It's like here, like this album is like introducing Elton John. It's kind of like, here it is. And it kind of sets you up.
And that probably right there is the concept. If there is a concept to this record, most like double albums tend to have a central theme, or it's like there is something about it that sets it apart from other works. And in this case, I think that's true. The creativity behind it, just the amount of time that they've recorded the songs, and the fact that they recorded so many. Yeah. How could they not? They're just like, no, we're not going to save any. We're just going to throw it all on one and just be done with that. So it's definitely his grand opus. There's no
and just
doubt about it.
The first, the first four songs just kind of really set you up. And again, this is a double album, so the first side only has 3 songs on it, but only because one is 11 minutes. But you get Candle in the Wind. Which, you know what? At the time, I don't remember that Candle in the Wind was a hit. Unfortunately, it kind of had its resurgence with the passing of Princess Diana. Right. And it was kind of rewritten, Candle in the Wind 97. And Bernie Taupin went in and rewrote some of the lyrics because Elton John was very good friends with Princess Diana, affected, deeply by her passing. It became like the second biggest selling single of physical media. Of all time, number 1 for 14 weeks in the US. He's only ever performed it live once, and that was at Diana's funeral. And he said he'll never perform that version again unless like Diana's children ask him to. But he doesn't trot it out.
And rightly so.
He doesn't trot it out at the concerts and say, oh, here's the, he plays Candle in the Wind. Yeah, he'll do Candle in the Wind, but he won't do the
Diana version. Right. And rightly so. I like that. That's very respectful. And, it wasn't meant to be a lark, or I just find it, because of that melody, that strong melody, I think that the song absolutely works. Why would you write another melody when you already have it,
Yeah.
So, I mean, he
Yeah,
could have,
and it's the same thing. Even Bernie Taupin said that the song, even though the song mentions Marilyn Monroe, it's not particularly about her. It's just more about what fame does to people and how, it could be about Jim Morrison. It could be about, Janis Joplin. It could be about Princess Diana, just in general.
That's
what that will do to you. And if you listen to the lyrics, you could pretty much put that to any star. You're the treadmill and all that kind of stuff. Just kind of that's what it was. It just so happened at the time that it was Marilyn Monroe that where the lyrics fit. So another interesting thing about the cover of this album, or just in general, is I don't know what it is with England, but what's with the UK and the Wizard of Oz imagery, right? Because we would not a year later. We would get an album called El Dorado from Electric Light Orchestra, which featured like a scene from the Wizard of Oz heavily.
Yeah.
And at the time, nobody like Wizard of Oz wasn't a popular film. Especially in the UK, it wasn't like this beloved thing. So it's very interesting that Elton John would select that as first, right? He was 1st to the game with Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. And then another group would use the imagery of Wizard of Oz a year later on the cover of their album.
That's right.
So it's I thought that was just very strange.
The 70s was great for that. The imagery, the artistry, the creativity, of albums and the covers, and it had such imagination to it. And it just really, as a young kid, really opened your mind up to this kind of stuff. Because, back then we didn't have a lot of visual aid. Like, we didn't have MTV or anything like that to showcase a lot of, we had those late night shows like,
Night Flight
and,
Friday Night Videos,
rock concert and all that kind of stuff, but in this case, it's like, but those album covers, those are the things you remember, you know, and it's like, God, that's art, and this cover is no exception. The fact that he's actually stepping into a poster, I think is just phenomenal. Yeah, it's like, it's such a great,
and we said, we've said it on past episodes, just the album art was a thing.
Yeah.
That it was as important as the music, as
right.
What the jacket, what the cover jacket was going to say or not say, was just as important. And,
I often
and you're
thought,
right, like that iconography of those 70s albums that we continue to talk about.
I often thought that the album cover reflected what the album was about, but sometimes that's not the case. There are artists that use something so obscure or something so, mosaic or whatever, and it has nothing to do with the album at all, but So what about Dark Side of the Moon? Do you think that album cover reflects the craziness that's in there in a weird way? Yeah, in a weird way, yes. I think of like, I'm thinking of like a lot of the stuff Hypnosis did.
Yeah.
Like Wish You Were Here, like Pink Floyd, the guy's like, shaking hands with a guy on fire. It's like, what's that about? But again, it just, your imagination starts to run wild. And even if the music or the lyrics don't exactly match or fit what the album cover is or whatever, it doesn't matter. It just, you try to find ways to kind of connect the two, and it's just like a square peg in a round hole kind of thing. Like, make it fit,
I'm going to put forth that, the album cover for Bat Out of Hell probably sums up what the album title is about and what the
right.
That artwork matches the album title. Like, you're not questioning it at all. It's like,
but the thing of it is like when for me, that album speaks like metal, like real heavy metal, but the music is
like
rock,
the album cover. You think is, what is this?
This is like, this is like
Sabbath.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
and it's not.
It's not. It's rock and roll, but it's
300-pound guy with an operatic voice, and Phil Rizzuto, round and third and wrong.
That's right.
He's safe. No, safe for a second. So getting back to this though. Yeah, Benny and the Jets, that was his, number one single for him. I remember that song, like like early on the radio, like Benny and the Jets was even like from this album. I was trying to think of as a kid, like I remember that song as a kid. I don't really remember Goodbye Yellow Brick Road as much. I remember Benny and the Jets being on AM radio and just, hearing that crowd, like the crowd noise, like the fake live crowd noise.
And then that little burst of the piano, like
the piano. Yeah. The plink, plink, just really great. But then I really found myself falling in love with Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Just something about the lyrics, the arrangement. When it shows, it's featured not prominently, but it's in American Hustle, and it is used at such like I think that's what drives it home too. Is when music is used in movies at a point where you don't expect it, but then you realize it fits.
It does.
It kind of reconnects you.
Yeah.
And then there's just something funny about the lyrics though. In Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, there's one of the lyrics is it'll take you a couple of vodka and tonics to set you on your feet again. But he says vodka. So you got to listen to it. It's like a couple of vodka and tonics. I love the wordplay, and just like, it's just one of those things that I pick up on. And I'm like, then when I'm listening to a song, I'm waiting to hear vodka and tonics, which is great. But yeah, I just love it. It just love that song.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because it's short, but it's epic. It seems like it's a much longer song than it is because it feels like it's so epic, but it's not. It's like,
it's like a very short song actually. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's just so much in there, and the backing vocals, and just the arrangement. You got to give credit to Elton John.
I love this song has no title.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a Billy Joel song. Do you agree? I mean, you can't deny. Like just the verse, Billy Joel. Yeah. I hear Billy Joel singing that song, and it's not. I'm sure it's no surprise. I don't know if he's ever done that song live, but I can imagine Billy Joel sitting there singing that song, because when they used to tour together.
Yeah, they had the dual
That's right.
pianos
and they
out.
would come out and do each other's songs during their sets, and that would be a perfect. I mean, because to me, it sounds like a Billy Joel song.
Yeah.
But when the chorus kicks in, that's when it kind of it's different.
Yeah.
But the verse, oh my God, I could swear that it's perfect for Billy Joel. It's tailor made for him. I could just see him singing that song. Yeah, no doubt about it.
If we're going with off the beaten track, and there's a lot in here, so it's a double album, but Gray Seal.
Yeah.
Fell in love with that song too. I don't know what it's about. It's not really about anything, but it's just like these there's just a really good mix of songs in here. And even again, with a double album, it's like, you're probably not going to know a lot, but it's easy to listen to this album, especially, and I highly recommend, and it came to me today. I'm like, I think you really need to listen to it on vinyl because of the way it's broken up.
No doubt.
It is sectioned. You want to listen to, Funeral for a Friend, Candle in the Wind, and Benny and the Jets in one shot.
That's right.
And then flip it over and get Goodbye Yellow Brick Road and the next,
it most certainly
you can listen to it on Spotify and get it out of it. But I'm looking at it like it's made to be.
It's a totally different experience with vinyl.
Yeah.
And there are several albums that
it's made to be consumed that way.
Hendrix's Electric Ladyland for sure is a prime example of that, because every side of that album is a different thing. It's like one thing is like a pop sort of side, and the other is like more experimental, and then there's like sort of like a bluesy side, and then it's meant to be listened to in sections and experience each section and take a breather. Gather your thoughts, maybe come back to it an hour, maybe a day later, whatever.
Yeah, I think those pauses are kind of like
absolutely.
You said it; they're kind of like reset points where you kind of listen to these. This grouping of songs, stop, turn over, or get out the second disc, put it on, and then you kind of are ready for like the next set that comes your way. And this album is very much grouped like that. And I don't think I hadn't really thought about it with, there's plenty of other double albums we talk, I don't think of Tusk that way. I don't think of Tusk in groups of songs. I could listen to Tusk like all the way through and be like, okay, or I could listen to Out of the Blue that way, although that is kind of meant to be listened to in sections, especially on the second side. The White Album, you could just there's no rhyme or reason to that. You could just listen to the White Album and kind of like what, it's just a smattering of songs is not really. It's
just a very eclectic kind of mix.
It's just kind of like here's it's almost like the dumpster. It's like, here's what was left over. Here's what we were working on. We're not really together. Like like I said earlier, it's either that or it's a statement. And this falls into the statement.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
And just the storytelling and how it walks you kind of through that of girls that he's known and Sweet Painted Lady, and then Roy Rogers about being a kid and hero worship, and it's just taking you on this trip
Mhm.
of meeting Bernie Taupin, but also meeting Elton John and him delivering these songs. And
Well, one of the things I think we hit it, we already touched upon it, but one of the things, one of the words to use to describe this record, and I think Bernie Taupin even said it, was it's very cinematic. It has like a very sort of movie quality to it. It's not a soundtrack to anything in particular, but you could see that it, just the songs and the way they're written, they build up, you could definitely see these songs in films, or these songs could be written for a specific film in that fashion. So
because they're not even even if something you'd consider a throwaway, it's not really though, because it's every song has a story to it, and it's about a different character, and the Ballad of Danny Bailey and Dirty Little Girl. Like there's all these different characters that are inhabiting that are coming from Bernie Taupin's mind. That are spilling out onto the page. And then Elton John is just seems to be like the expert interpreter.
Right. That's a great, that side 3 is all Bernie Taupin, like there. That is like his story, like and it's such a great side. It's such an odd thing. Like it's like these old timey, whiny kind of,
Sweet Painted Ladies kind of throw, Ballad of Danny Bailey is kind of throwbacky as well.
I love it.
And then you get the last side, which again, I advocate for. Your Sister Can't Twist is probably might be the weakest song on the album, but it kind of backs right into Saturday Night's All Right.
It sets up Saturday Night's All Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
the prelude.
Exactly. It's exactly. You said it perfectly. I was trying to get that across. Of like, it's kind of like the warm up, and then when you hear Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, I'm actually, not that I never liked that song, but I'm actually more into it when I hear Your Sister Can't Twist. Yeah, because it kind of is getting you ready, and then Saturday Night's All Right is just a total, like I said, just a total rave up. It's just totally blasting, kind of ripping through, side 4, kind of landing, and then you get, like I said, we get Roy Rogers, which is,
right. Again, another live staple, that song too. That really gets the crowd going Saturday night. I mean, oh God. Everybody's not gonna stop it, there's not too much that he's not going to get you up on your feet for, right? And any of his, his up tempo songs, he just owns the crowd. I mean, that was his thing. That was his stock and trade. And he said, one of the things he said about about the glasses and the costumes is, he goes, no one is sexy behind a piano. Like, there's nothing sexy about a guy behind a piano. So look at people like Lady Gaga. That's why she does what she does.
Yeah.
That's exactly why she dresses up in these weird outfits, and because nobody would care.
Yeah. And he did the same thing. It was like take it to like the nth degree. And then I think we saw the pinnacle of that in the movie Tommy. with those shoes, the pinball wizard,
the stilts, he's walking around. Yeah,
I think the shoes were taller than him. Actually,
good Lord, you got to be on something watching that movie. Good Lord.
I don't know how he stood in them, because the shoes are literally taller than he is. It's like this little guy on top of these giant shoes. But, that became his stock and trade, was that whole flamboyance. Did you see Rocket Man?
I did.
What did you think of it?
I enjoyed it.
I thought it was really well done.
I thought it was really well done. It was like it was a musical about his life, and I really liked the way that they, it wasn't just your typical biopic. It was both. I thought it was brilliant. I thought
coming on the heels of Bohemian Rhapsody, which Dexter Fletcher kind of ghost directed, because Bryan Singer was taken off the film, so Dexter Fletcher came in and finished, but Dexter Fletcher directed Rocket Man proper, the whole thing. Yeah. And I think everybody thought they were going to get another Bohemian Rhapsody of, here's the story of Elton John. I don't think Elton John's life would lend itself to a Bohemian Rhapsody. I think Rocket Man was the right way to do it. That absolutely his life is a fantasy. His life is this wild thing that is open to interpretation.
Stone left unturned. Yeah. In that film. I mean, it covers all the big moments in his life, and
Taron Egerton did such a great job.
Oh yeah,
and that's the great thing. See, and the perfect thing is Bernie Taupin's lyrics lended itself to telling the story, telling their story. So, like you said, it was very much a musical where the music was written 40, 50 years ago, and it was sitting there waiting
That's
to
right.
be revealed as the story, as their story.
You don't need to write new music for this.
There was
thing.
nothing needed.
It's already there. It's all there. Yep.
Yeah. Just like, and that there's that scene when Bernie Taupin's character sings Goodbye Yellow Brick Road when they have a fight.
Yeah.
And he's, and that's kind of what that song was about. It was about celebrity, about, I'm not necessarily cut out for this. I'm happy just not being anonymous. So it was used to such great, like the music was just kind of took you on a musical journey through his life, and it wasn't in chronological order. They put the songs where they needed to go,
and exactly the right moment in his whatever he was feeling at the time, and that's fine. I mean,
it was really well
worked.
done.
It was such great effect.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect going into it, but I came out, I'm like, wow, I would have
liked to have seen that in the theater. I watched it on Prime, but I'm sorry I missed it.
Yeah, so I got to see it in the theater. Yeah. It was just like, it was a nice counterpoint to Bohemian Rhapsody, because everyone was so high on that.
I didn't see. I never saw Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh, really? You didn't?
No.
That's more of like the straight up, tale of the band.
Yeah.
And then this, Rocket Man was kind of like the abstract thing, which again lent itself to his life and his story much better. Much better.
That song is probably, it's not on this album, unfortunately. Honky Chateau is probably my second favorite.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of like, for me, Honky Chateau is like a new world record. Ding. To Out of the Blue, right? It's not directly before this album, but to me the songs are very similar, and they could have appeared on this record. There's no doubt. I think Rocket Man, I love Mona Lisa's and Mad Hatters. I love that one. That's
it was only
really
one album
great
away.
Effect
Before this
Almost
was
Famous.
Before this was Don't Shoot Me, I'm only the piano player. Then before this was Honky Chateau, which is Honky Cat has got it. It got Honky Cat and
Slave, and it's really good. I mean, some of the lesser known songs are just really good little nuggets. I mean, you do yourself a favor and don't just listen to the hits. There's a lot of great stuff to dive into. If you're not really that familiar with Elton John, just check it out. I mean, it's well worth your time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's odd because he's Elton John is thrown into like the singer songwriter pool.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was funny, because when I think of singer songwriter, I think of like James Taylor.
Yeah, you think of like the acoustic guitar,
like the person that
troubadour.
But writes like singer songwriter implies that they're the person that's doing everything.
Yeah.
It's like they're the singer and the songwriter, and technically Elton John is the songwriter. He's the music writer. I just thought that was always strange, but he fits because he makes it his own. And that's the key is the great interpreters like Elvis or anybody that didn't write their own music. They need to have that other piece that allows them to interpret it, that they can connect to those things and make them their own. And that, that's the difference between someone just singing a cover, going through the motions and making it sound like the original or whatever, and someone that can really bring something to a song because they're bringing something personal. And that's what you get on Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Yeah.
Well, I would argue that you get that with every album they've done, everything again, I'm not a huge fan of the later stuff, and that's just because of trying to adapt.
Like after I'm Still Standing, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like the stuff in the 80s. I mean, there was some good hits.
Sad songs say so much,
and Blue Eyes. My baby. I didn't even know that was Elton John I honestly, I was like, that's Elton John. What?
Yeah,
Blue Eyes.
Well, you know what? What happened? He had he underwent vocal cord surgery.
Yeah,
in 1987, and it significantly, in a significant way, changed his vocal range.
Yeah,
his whole vocal range. I don't know what it's called, but he was lowered. He can't sing like the la 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 la. He can't do like that kind of stuff that he used to, because his register is totally different now.
Well, interestingly enough, I mean, if you listen, when I saw him both times, obviously he has to. It's in a different key. The songs are done to fit that vocal range, and sometimes he'll try to go there, but it's just whatever. But no, he knows exactly where to do it, and just accommodate that. But
yeah,
but
but it
it
was
was
a
that live
significant
album
thing.
he put out, like was it
Live in Australia, I think it
in
was.
Australia, and his voice was really like shot.
Yeah.
I remember on that record, and it's like I'm surprised that it even got released because he's such a let's be honest. And he kind of became a really like kind of a diva.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Like he's very, very vain, and he's very, particular about certain things. So for that album to have been released as it was and his voice sounding that, I'm really surprised he let that go.
Yeah, I mean, it depends.
As a major release.
Also, if he was, I mean, he's had his share. If you watch Rocket Man, he certainly had his share, significant share of substance and alcohol abuse. So
yeah,
who knows where he was at that point when that album came out? If he was still in the throes of that, I think he might have been clean by that point. But
yeah,
that was the music video where he's dressed like Mozart, right?
Yeah,
and he sings "Candle in the Wind."
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful. I mean, because it's just him with an orchestra.
Yeah.
Which is gorgeous. The music is fantastic, but man, you just it's kind of hard because you got to get past that gravelly, like his scratchy voice, and
and again, that register is just lower.
Yeah. So
it almost sounds like he's singing songs flatter, just because if it's in a lower, the key in the register is lower, so it's just different. Best double album? Where does this sit in the pantheon of double albums?
Oh, it's definitely. I would say it's definitely up there as one of the perfect, because there are some double albums that not every song is perfect,
mm-hmm.
and you sometimes you do get the sense that perhaps some songs are filler,
a little overreach.
Yeah. But in this case, I don't think so. Because like we pointed out, each side is has a very distinct sound and very distinct flavor. And you really need to listen to the vinyl to really kind of get that.
Mm-hmm.
And to kind of go back and listen to it all the way through, I think you might think, okay, this is, you're going to feel that. You're going to feel the length of this album. If you try to listen to it all the way through, I would very highly recommend you break it up, and if you have, if you're lucky enough to have the vinyl, definitely you experience it that way. But I think, I definitely think it's one of the, probably in the top 10, greatest double albums of all time. I mean,
Rolling Stone did a reader poll.
Okay.
Of the 10 greatest double albums of all time. So you want me to roll through?
Let's do it.
See if in fact this cut the mustard. Number 10. Smashing Pumpkins, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness.
Okay.
Number 9, Clash, London Calling. Number 8, I don't know if this should count, but Allman Brothers at the Fillmore East. Should live albums count?
That's such a significant release for them. I think that's probably the most important live album because they really didn't have much material at the time. So I would count that. Number
7, The Who, Quadrophenia. Number 6, Dylan, Blonde on Blonde. Number 5, we're running out of slots, Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti. Number 4, Bruce Springsteen, The River. I don't know.
Wow.
Number 3, Rolling Stones, Exile on Main Street.
Okay.
Number 2, Pink Floyd, The Wall.
Okay.
Number 1, according to the Rolling Stone Readers Poll, number 1 double album, The White Album by the Beatles.
So it's not even in the top 10, huh?
Not even in the top 10 according to this Readers Poll. I don't know that the Beatles are number 1. Again, nothing against that album, but I just, there are so many other albums that actually use those sides of vinyl to make a statement and to say something. And just because it's the Beatles, I don't think it, I think that's just because it's the Beatles, it's got to be number 1. I don't think so.
Well, I would say,
and where the hell is Tuscan Out of the Blue?
Right. Physical Graffiti. That's a leftover album for the most part. A lot of the tracks on that record are leftover songs. So why would that
apparently good enough to, for the readers? I guess we don't fit with the readers because Goodbye Yellow Brick Road should absolutely be there. Top songs? Is it the hits? Did you hit all the favorites?
My favorite, well, like I said, my favorite is the Funeral for a Friend and Love Lies Bleeding, which is not a hit, but it's a great piece of brilliant piece of music. I love it. That in itself could be, I could make a case for this entire album, just the bass on that one, that opening track.
I think you absolutely could too, because I think it's indicative of what's to come. Yeah, I think if I think you're right. If you say to somebody, listen to these two songs, if you like this, you're going to like the rest of the album. You won't be disappointed. Mm-hmm. I think you're absolutely right with that.
But I love, but I would Betting on the Jets, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road.
Yeah.
Song Has No Title, Gray Seal.
Jamaica Jerk Off? What's that song about?
Who knows?
Yeah.
And then Harmony, I love too. I love Harmony.
Yeah. So much to love here. This is our first. No, it's our second double album, because we did talk about Tusk actually once already. So that, oddly enough, this one is a can't miss.
Yeah,
an artist that I think, like you said it at the height of his powers. Honestly,
yeah.
Not that the other stuff was on the downhill slope, but just the coming together of the lyrics and the music and the timing, and the whole statement that was made with this, this collection of songs, I think is so important for people to listen to. The hits are in here to pull out. Yeah. But I think you're missing a lot if you just kind of skip through it. If you can get it on vinyl, or if you can replicate the vinyl experience by getting the track listing and taking pauses. I wish they would do that maybe on Spotify, is kind of give you like an album option.
Yeah.
They'll put like a pause in, like between the album, so you can kind of that would be something fun
or have like a sound effect where somebody turning the
like
record over.
Like Tom Petty did, like, hello CD listeners. We've come to the point in this CD where the people listening on album or cassette will have to stand up or sit down. And
one of the things I wanted to point out too was, which I found kind of odd, and it just came to me in doing some of the research on this one, is like Elton John made an odd statement saying that at this period in his life he was very naive, which I find very odd, because this is his most profound stuff. The lyrics to this early stuff is just so, God, it's like they're evergreens. They're so monumental. And to say that this was your naive point in your life, you're way ahead of the game. Brian Wilson.
He probably, he probably meant like he didn't know what he didn't know. Like he didn't know how impactful, or he didn't realize what this was going to be. Like, we were so young and so, just kind of full of ourselves, or just kind of going for it. And you don't really realize the risk that you're taking, or what the gamble is, or what the after effect will be. So I could totally understand where he would say that, but it is odd 7 albums in, because this was his 7th. So it'll be like, okay, you're kind of into you're kind of deep into your career already. And you've had success, with Daniel,
you found your groove, your song, and you're still being this creative.
Yeah,
good Lord, yeah.
And you're still like, but then again, if you look back, at his, this album is 50 years next year.
Yeah.
I guess if you look back on it now, he could absolutely say, in relative to everything else, I was pretty naive. When you look at the scope of his career at this point, it's like, this is like the early days. For other people, they'd love to be 7 albums in and be like, oh, so naive. But no, it's,
but just musically speaking, it's just so, for me, it's so far superior than that later period of like the 80s. And, it's just so, musically, it's just so much richer and so much more. There was something
about the 70s. Yeah. That was just a different, these groups didn't know what they were doing, right? They just kind of like get it, the Eagles or all these bands just kind of assembling and just kind of making music and not really realizing the impact.
Right.
But they had like this aesthetic, this work aesthetic, where it was just about like everybody just wanted a record contract. Like that was like the thing. That's what people aspire to is just making music and making records. And I think there's a certain amount of quality in the 70s that you don't see nowadays, and I'm not saying stuff nowadays is no good. But like you're saying, like, these things were crafted and maybe half the time they didn't realize what they were doing, but they were just like trying, they had the ability and the levity without the pressure to do these things. We said it back in the day, you would get artists like Steve Miller, 10 albums in, didn't have his biggest album.
Which could never happen today.
Yeah, you had record labels that were patient, that were kind of like in it, in it to win it or in it for the long haul.
Yeah,
so you
today,
got that
if you don't have a hit, you're done. Like that's it. There's no way you're going to get,
Yeah, you're going to get dropped and maybe you get picked up by someone else and then you're trying again or, it's different. So there's something to be said for that, they were able to put, do things somewhat on their terms, and especially in this album, if you do your own research, they all got together. Like I said, all the bandmates were kind of living together and just kind of going through the process, getting this album together. There's a certain communal aspect to that, right? Because everybody's involved. All those guys, the sidemen were all doing the backing vocals and they did expert work on that as well. They took that into their own hands. So,
some of these guys have been with him for so long too.
Yeah. This was like his core, core band.
That's right.
Was Davey Johnstone, Dee Murray, Nigel Olsson. I mean, that was like his trio of guitar, bass, and drums.
Yeah.
And they were with him for a while, and then he kicked them to the curb, I guess, in the 80s, and then they got back together again. But when you've got that group think and you've got people on the same page, you can get things done, and amazing things can happen when everybody's kind of involved and engaged.
Yeah.
This is you get Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. You get a double album that is so easy to listen to, and again, the hits, the amount of hits speak for the quality of this.
Yeah.
And those do not encapsulate the whole album. Like I said, it's great stuff like Gray Seal and This Song Has No Title and Roy Rogers. So much great stuff in here for you to find. So that's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. Thank you for joining us on another musical mystery tour, but then we might get a cease and desist from the Beatles. So it's just going to be on this musical journey as we return from the Yellow Brick Road. So thank you for joining us. New episodes come on every Thursday about music and movies that shaped our lives. You can also find us on social media, as I said at the beginning, at 3324 podcast. That's on Instagram and Facebook. We also do live shows every other Wednesday too. So that's a chance to interact. We give prizes away. It's a lot of fun. There's trivia, a lot of great interaction there. So we look forward to seeing you there one way or another. So for Eric, this has been Dean, and we will catch you on double flip sides.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider. So please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.